Hey guys! Tonight we begin with something a little darker. A time of plagues, punishments, and pottage. We're diving into what life was really like during the Middle Ages. Forget the castles and chivalry Hollywood sold you. We're talking about the damp, the grime, and the ever-present smell of despair. The truth? You probably wouldn't last a single day. Your modern immune system would take one look at a cup of medieval water and simply file for retirement. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1325. The first thing you notice isn't the light, because there isn't any. Your home has no windows, just a few gaps in the walls that let in the biting morning chill. The second thing you notice is the smell. Oh, it's a fragrant symphony. A subtle blend of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and something you pray isn't mold, but know in your soul probably is. You blink awake as the church bell clangs in the distance. It's the medieval version of an alarm clock, only louder and somehow even less merciful. Your bed is a half-rotted straw mattress stuffed with bugs and hay that smells like a barn floor because, well, it was a barn floor 3 months ago. There's no memory foam, no pillows, and definitely no Egyptian cotton sheets. Just a coarse wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter and now weighs roughly as much as a small cow from the accumulated grime. You share this single, smoky room with your entire family, parents, siblings, and maybe a random cousin who just never left. But you're not just sharing with people. Over in the corner, separated by a low wattle fence, are your most valuable assets, the family pig and a couple of chickens. Bringing livestock inside at night was common practice, partly for their warmth and partly to keep them from being stolen. So as you swing your legs out of bed, your bare feet don't land on a soft rug. They land on a cold, damp dirt floor packed down with years of filth and strewn with rushes. And you have to step carefully to avoid what the chicken left behind. Historians still argue whether the term Dark Ages accurately reflects the intellectual life of the period, but for you, waking up in this dim, crowded hovel, life is certainly dark, damp, and decidedly uncomfortable. You try to stretch, but immediately regret it because the air is freezing and your joints ache. You're 22 years old, which in medieval terms is roughly middle-aged. And this is just how your day starts. Nature calls. And it's not calling politely, it's screaming. Here's the part where you start missing the modern bathroom. There's no toilet, no seat, no toilet paper, not even a mildly resentful plunger in the corner. You stumble out of the hut, past the family goat, and grab the wooden bucket behind the house. It's already full because Uncle Wolfstan had a rough night after eating bad turnips. The smell is biblical. You hold your breath, do your business, and then comes the kicker. You shuffle to the narrow, muddy lane that serves as a street and, with a half-hearted shout of "Gardez-vous," Old French for "watch out for the water," you toss the contents into the open drain running down the middle. Frankly, no one ever moves fast enough. The streets in your medieval town are essentially open sewers, a charming river of human waste, animal droppings, and mystery liquids you'd rather not examine. If you lived in a castle, you might have a slightly more sophisticated system. The garderobe, which was basically a stone seat with a hole that dropped everything down the castle wall into the moat below. A great idea, until your enemies realized they could try to climb up the chute. Talk about an unpleasant security breach. Back in your village, though, it's all much more communal. The person tasked with cleaning out the town's cesspits, known as a gong farmer, was one of the most essential and most ostracized workers. They could only work at night, and the stench clung to them for life. As for personal hygiene, you splash some icy water on your face from a wooden basin. Soap is a luxury you've only heard about in stories. And bathing? Historians still argue whether medieval people were as filthy as pop culture suggests. But the common belief was that opening your pores with hot water let disease in. So, a full bath might happen once or twice a year, if you're lucky. For now, you just wipe your hands on your tunic, the same one you slept in, and the same one you'll work in all day. You haven't brushed your teeth, but we'll get to that grim reality later. For now, you're just happy you survived the morning trip to the bucket. Now that you're feeling refreshed, it's time for breakfast. You squat near the central fire pit, which is filling the room with a comforting layer of smoke, and your mother hands you a wooden bowl of something that looks like it was scraped off a muddy boot. Welcome to your daily ration of pottage. Pottage is a thick, gloopy stew made of whatever you can find: oats, barley, peas, and any root vegetables you manage to grow. It's been simmering in the same pot for days, maybe even weeks. New ingredients are just dumped on top of the old ones. It's less of a recipe and more of an ongoing edible experiment. On the side, you have a hunk of bread. But this isn't the soft, fluffy loaf you're used to. It's a dense, dark bread made from rye or barley flour, often bulked up with sawdust or ground up acorns because wheat is a rich man's fantasy. This loaf is not your friend. You don't slice it, you negotiate with it. It's so hard it could probably deflect an arrow. In wealthier households, they used stale bread called a trencher as an edible plate. You'd put your meat on it, the bread would soak up the juices, and after the meal, it was either given to the dogs or the poor. You, however, are the poor, so you just eat the hard bread. What about drinks? You're not sipping orange juice or an oat milk latte. You're drinking beer. Yes, beer. At 6 a.m. Why? Because the water from the local stream is teeming with parasites and filth from all that waste being dumped upstream. Brewing the weak, low-alcohol ale known as small beer killed off the dangerous microbes, making it the safest thing to drink. Kids drink it, too. No one's happy about it, but at least it won't kill you immediately. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasant diet was truly deficient. Some point to the variety of foraged greens and wild herbs that could supplement the pottage, while others emphasize the constant, looming threat of famine, where one bad harvest meant you and everyone you knew would starve. For now, you chew your gritty bread, gulp your watery beer, and try not to think about the rat that may have nibbled on your breakfast in the night. Food doesn't energize you. It just happens to you. Stomach full, or at least not empty, You step out of your smoky hut and into the bustling medieval street. The world outside is a chaotic assault on the senses. Remember the chickens and the pig you share your home with? Everyone else has them too, and they're all wandering freely through the muddy lanes, dodging carts, dogs, and barefoot children. The air, already thick with wood smoke, carries the sharp tang of the blacksmith's forge, the pungent odor of the tanner scraping animal hides, and the overwhelming smell from the butcher's stall, where meat hangs covered in a buzzing cloud of flies. There is no peace and quiet. The church bells ring out again, not just to mark the time, but to call everyone to prayer. It's a sound that governs your entire day, a constant reminder of your duties to God and your Lord. A town crier shouts the latest news, his voice competing with the clatter of wooden wheels on cobblestone, the braying of a donkey, and the endless chatter of merchants hawking their wares. You trudge past the weaver's cottage, the air filled with the rhythmic thump-thump of the loom, and duck as someone from a second-story window, forgetting their garde-lou, empties another chamber pot just a few feet away from you. Inside your home, and in the homes of the wealthy, people would try to combat the smells by strewing herbs, like lavender, mint, or chamomile on the floor. When they were walked on, they'd release a pleasant fragrance to temporarily mask the underlying stench of unwashed bodies and damp rushes. But out here in the street, there is no such relief. Historians still argue whether medieval towns were chaotic hellscapes or surprisingly well-regulated communities. While there were guilds and local ordinances trying to control things like where you could dump your trash, for the average person walking through it, the experience was one of sensory overload. You keep your head down, your eyes on the ground to avoid the worst of the filth, and pull your woolen tunic tighter against the chill. Your long day of labor in the fields is about to begin, and the town is just waking up around you, a loud, smelly, and vibrant tapestry of life and grime. As the sun finally sets, painting the sky in hues of orange and gray, you trudge back towards your little hut. Your back aches, your hands are raw, and the meager meal of pottage you had this morning feels like a distant memory. The day is done. You collapse onto your straw mattress, the familiar scent of hay and livestock a strange kind of comfort. The fire has died down to glowing embers, and the room is sinking back into a profound darkness, broken only by a sliver of moonlight through a crack in the wall. You pull the heavy, scratchy wool blanket over you, the sounds of your sleeping family a soft rhythm in the quiet. In this moment, there is a flicker of peace. Life is brutal, short, and constantly under siege by hunger and sickness. But it is your life. You close your eyes, shutting out the grime and the hardship, and for a few precious hours, you drift away into the simple, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. And as you rest, you can finally forget the world outside, finding a brief sanctuary in the deep, quiet dark of the medieval night. The weak morning light filters through the gaps in your hut's wall, signaling the start of another day. There's no gentle waking up, no snooze button, just the insistent clang of the distant church bell and the ache that has settled deep in your bones. Your breakfast was the usual affair, a lukewarm bowl of pottage and a hunk of bread so hard it could be used for home defense. But now, it's time to work. You are a peasant, and your life is tethered to the soil, to the seasons, and to the whims of the Lord who owns the very ground beneath your feet. You step out into the crisp air and join the silent procession of figures heading towards the great open fields that surround your village. These fields are not neat squares of private property. They are vast expanses, divided into long, narrow strips. You have a few strips scattered here and there, sandwiched between those of your neighbors. This is the three-field system, the agricultural engine of your world. One field lies fallow, resting for the year, another is planted with wheat or rye, and the third with peas or beans to enrich the soil. It's a clever system, but it means your workday involves a lot of walking. Your first task is plowing. The plow isn't a marvel of engineering. It's a heavy, clumsy beast of wood and iron, pulled by a pair of equally weary-looking oxen. You grip the handles, your knuckles white, and lean your entire body weight into it, trying to guide the blade in a straight line through the heavy, damp earth. Your shoulders burn, your back screams, and the muscles in your legs quiver with strain. You do this for hours. There are no coffee breaks, no checking your phone, no clocking out at 5. Your clock is the sun, and it has only just begun its slow arc across the sky. You work your strips, carefully turning at the edges, marked only by unplowed patches of turf called box. These little grassy borders are a constant source of tension. Did your neighbor just plow a few inches into your strip? It's a petty grievance, but when those few inches determine whether your family eats or starves come winter, it's the most important thing in the world. Historians still argue whether the concept of the lazy peasant in medieval literature was a reflection of reality or simply propaganda from the land-owning classes who wanted to justify their own existence. But as you pause for a moment, wiping sweat from your brow with a grimy forearm and looking out at the endless expanse of earth still to be turned, you don't feel lazy. You feel like a cog in a great, relentless machine, one that grinds on from sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week. And on the 7th day, you rest, but only if the harvest isn't pressing, or the Lord doesn't demand extra work, or your leaky roof doesn't finally give way. The work is never truly done. One chilly autumn afternoon, while reaping the harvest with your sickle, the sharp blade slips. It's a small cut on your hand, nothing you haven't had 100 times before. You wrap it in a piece of rag and keep working, because stopping isn't an option. But a few days later, your hand is swollen, hot to the touch, and throbbing with a pain that makes you dizzy. The red streaks creeping up your arm tell you this is more than a simple scratch. You need help. But a doctor? That's for nobles. You have to rely on the village's medical expertise, which is a terrifying cocktail of tradition, religion, and sheer guesswork. You might visit the barber surgeon, the local one-stop shop for a haircut, a tooth pulling, and the occasional amputation. He takes one look at your arm and declares your humors are out of balance. According to the medical wisdom of the time, your body is governed by 4 fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A fever and swelling clearly mean you have an excess of blood. The cure? Bloodletting. He produces a sharp lancet and a small bowl, and you watch, grimacing, as your own vital fluid is drained away, weakening you further. If that doesn't work, he might try applying a poultice of bread, milk, and herbs, or perhaps something less appealing, like goose dung. If you're lucky, you have a village, wise woman, who knows her herbs. Historians still argue whether the extensive use of herbal remedies by these women was effective folk medicine or merely superstition, which often landed them in trouble with the church for supposed witchcraft. She might give you a bitter tonic to drink or have you recite a charm. A more fringe, but very real, diagnostic tool was uroscopy. A physician, if you could ever afford one, would spend a great deal of time examining a flask of your urine. They would study its color against elaborate charts, note its smell, its thickness, and sometimes even its taste, to determine the nature of your illness. It was the medieval equivalent of a lab test, only far less accurate and infinitely more disgusting. As your fever climbs, you lie on your straw mattress, delirious, while your family prays. There are no antibiotics, no understanding of germs. They think your sickness comes from bad air, or a misalignment of the planets, or, most likely, as a punishment from God for some forgotten sin. Your survival now is not a matter of medicine. It's a matter of luck and faith. Your neighbor, Thomas, wasn't so lucky. Last winter, the famine was severe. The harvest had failed, and the Lord's granary was locked tight. Thomas, gaunt and desperate, was caught poaching a rabbit in the Lord's woods. The punishment was swift and brutal. He was hauled before the village, his hand struck off as a warning to others. He survived the punishment, but not the infection that followed. He died a week later, leaving a wife and 3 small children. This is the casual brutality of your world. Life is fragile, and death is an ever-present neighbor. The average life expectancy hovers somewhere around 35 or 40, but this number is deeply misleading. It's dragged down by the staggering number of children who don't survive infancy. Nearly half of all children die before the age of 5 from sickness, malnutrition, or accidents. If you managed to survive the gauntlet of childhood, you had a decent chance of living into your 50s or even 60s, your body creaking and scarred, but alive. You are what they might call old. You see reminders of mortality everywhere. It's in the art in the church, with its vivid depictions of hellfire and skeletons dancing with kings and peasants alike. This theme is called memento mori, remember you must die. The wealthy might even keep a skull on their desk, not as a morbid decoration, but as a philosophical tool to remind them that earthly life is fleeting and the afterlife is eternal. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of violence was a constant state of brutal chaos or if it was more sporadic and ritualized than modern depictions suggest. But from where you stand, between the public punishments, the threat of border skirmishes, and the simple, grinding danger of everyday life, it feels pretty constant. You don't worry about a retirement plan. You worry about surviving until spring. Death comes in so many forms. It comes with the summer flux that carries away the young. It comes with the winter cold that seeps into the bones of the old. It comes with the plague, the Black Death, which can sweep through and leave a village hauntingly silent in a matter of weeks. And when it comes for you, there will be no grand funeral. You'll be washed, wrapped in a simple linen shroud, and buried quickly in the crowded churchyard. There is no embalming, no fancy coffin, just a hole in the earth and a few murmured prayers. Your life, a long testament to endurance, will end quietly, your small space in the world quickly filled by another soul, born to labor, to suffer, and to hope for a better life in the next world. As the evening chill settles in, you lie on your cot of straw, listening to the soft breathing of your family around you. The throbbing in your hand has subsided to a dull ache, and the fever, for now, has broken. You survived. For today, you think of Thomas, of the small children who cry from hunger, of the endless cycle of work that awaits you with the sunrise. You pull the rough wool blanket up to your chin, a small shield against the vast, indifferent darkness. The world is a hard and unforgiving place, but in the shared warmth of this tiny, smoky room, there is a flicker of something that feels like peace. You close your eyes, and as you drift into a heavy, dreamless sleep, you let the weariness of the world fall away, finding a moment of reprieve before the sun rises, and you have to do it all over again. You are lying on your back, staring up at a mirror attached to the canopy of your bed. This will be your world for months. Your body, shattered in a horrific bus accident, is encased in plaster from the neck down. You are 18 years old, and the future you planned, a life as a doctor, has been stolen from you. The air is thick with the scent of antiseptic and the dull, metallic tang of your own blood. Outside, Mexico City hums with life, but in this room, there is only silence, stillness, and a deep, throbbing pain that has become your constant companion. Your father, wanting to give you something to do, brings you a lap easel and a box of paints. You can't move, you can't walk, but you can hold a brush. And so, you begin to paint the only thing you can see, yourself. This isn't an act of vanity. It's an act of survival. You are your own first landscape, your own first subject, your own first mystery to solve. The pain is a living thing. It coils around your spine, a broken column you will feel for the rest of your life. Over the next 3 decades, you will endure more than 30 surgeries. You will be bound in steel and leather corsets to hold your body together. But you do not simply wear them. You turn them into art. These plaster corsets, these instruments of your suffering, become your canvases. You paint them with hammers and sickles, with unborn fetuses, with butterflies and birds. You take the symbol of your imprisonment and you make it a declaration of defiance. It's a quirky, intimate rebellion. If you must be trapped in a cage, you will at least decorate the bars. This is the alchemy you learn early. How to spin pain into paint. How to transform agony into beauty. Your self-portraits become a visual diary of your body. You paint your wounds with an unflinching, almost clinical honesty. In one, a shower of nails pierces your skin. In another, you hold your own bleeding heart in your hand. There is no filter here, no attempt to soften the reality. These are the original, most intense selfies, taken not with a phone camera but with a paintbrush and a soul laid bare. Art historians still argue whether your work should be classified as surrealism, a label you yourself rejected. When the French poet André Breton tried to claim you for his movement, you famously scoffed. You told them you never painted dreams. You painted your own reality. And your reality was the fractured spine, the weeping wounds, the body that betrayed you every single day. You are not capturing a nightmare on canvas. You are documenting the experience of being awake inside one. And through it all, your gaze, looking out from the painting, is direct, unbroken, and unapologetic. You are in pain, yes, but you are here. You are watching. You decide that if the world is going to stare at you, you will give it something to look at. You shed the fashionable European dresses of your youth and adopt the traditional garments of the Tawana women from the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. This is not just a style choice. It is a profound political and cultural statement. You choose the clothing of a region known for its strong, matriarchal society, where women control the local markets and possess a confident autonomy. The long, flowing skirts have the practical benefit of concealing your uneven legs, but more importantly, the vibrant, embroidered blouses, the intricate floral headdresses, and the heavy, pre-Columbian jewelry become your armor. You are crafting an identity, piece by piece, that is proudly, defiantly Mexican. You are rejecting the colonial beauty standards and embracing your own heritage, your Mexicanidad. Your home, the Casa Azul, the blue house in Coyoacan, becomes an extension of this identity. You paint its walls a startling cobalt blue, a color that vibrates with life. The garden overflows with bougainvillea, cacti, and calla lilies. It's here you create your own private universe, a sanctuary filled with the things you love. You collect folk art, Judas figures, and ancient Aztec statues. And you fill it with animals. You keep parrots, macaws, dogs, and even a fawn. But most famously, you surround yourself with spider monkeys. Your monkeys, Falong Chong and Caimito del Guayabal, become your frequent companions, their long, spindly arms wrapped around your neck in your self-portraits. They are your tender familiars, your surrogate children, a symbol of the wild, untamable life force that you nurture within yourself. Through all this, your relationship with the great muralist Diego Rivera rages like a storm. He is the other great accident of your life, a love as consuming and as damaging as the bus crash. Feminist scholars still argue whether your tumultuous, lifelong devotion to Diego complicates or enriches your status as a feminist icon. He is your champion and your greatest betrayer, a man whose infidelities cause you immense pain, pain that you pour onto your canvases. Yet you refuse to be merely a victim. You take lovers of your own, both men and women, asserting your own desires and your own independence. You refuse to be defined by any one relationship, any one label. You are a wife, yes, but you are also a communist, a lover, an artist, a force of nature. And you insist on being seen as all of it. Your unibrow, which you emphasize with a dark pencil, becomes a revolutionary act in a world obsessed with conformity and tweezers. It is a declaration that you will not pluck, hide, or change any part of yourself to fit in. You are who you are. The years wear on, and your body continues its slow, relentless war against you. In 1953, you are finally given your first solo exhibition in your home country of Mexico. It is the moment of recognition you have long deserved. But you are bedridden, recovering from yet another surgery, and your doctors forbid you from attending. So, you do what only you would do. You arrange for an ambulance to take you to the gallery. You arrive to the stunned applause of the crowd, carried on a stretcher and placed in your own magnificent four-poster bed, which has been set up in the center of the room. Dressed in your finest Tawana dress, adorned with ribbons and jewelry, you hold court from your bed, greeting friends, telling jokes, and drinking tequila. If you cannot walk to your triumph, you will have your triumph brought to your bedside. It is a moment of pure, indomitable will, a perfect fusion of your suffering and your spectacle. In these final years, you pour your thoughts into a diary. It is not a neat, orderly journal. It is a chaotic, vibrant, and deeply intimate scrapbook. You fill its pages with sketches, watercolor paintings, poems, and searingly honest confessions about your pain, your love for Diego, and your political beliefs. It's a look directly into the whirlwind of your mind, a place where color, pain, and revolutionary fire collide. Cultural critics still argue whether the commercialization of your image, your face on tote bags, t-shirts, and tequila bottles, dilutes your revolutionary message or, conversely, amplifies your reach to new generations. But looking at the raw, unfiltered pages of your diary, it's clear your life was too complex, too contradictory, to ever be fully contained by a tote bag. In 1954, just 8 days before you die at the age of 47, you pick up your brush one last time. You don't paint another self-portrait of your suffering body. You paint a still life. Bright, luscious, perfectly ripe watermelons, cut open to reveal their cool, red flesh and dark seeds. It is a simple, vibrant celebration of life. And on one of the slices, in bold capital letters, you write your final message to the world. Viva la vida, long live life. After a lifetime of pain, after more than 30 surgeries, after enduring heartbreak and physical agony that would have crushed most people, this is your closing statement. It is the ultimate act of resilience, a final, joyful defiance in the face of death. You have looked into the abyss, and you have answered it with color, with life, with watermelons. You leave the world not with a cry of pain, but with a toast to the very act of living. And in doing so, you ensure that your story, your art, and your unshakable spirit will, indeed, live forever. You are standing in front of a giant of a man who seems to take up all the air in the room. He is perched high on a scaffold, painting a sweeping history of your people onto a vast wall. You are 21 years old, your body is a roadmap of pain held together by sheer will, and you have brought him your small, intensely personal paintings to judge. This is Diego Rivera, the most famous artist in Mexico, and you ask him, with a bluntness that takes him by surprise, if your work has any value. He climbs down from his perch, looks closely at the canvases that show your reality, the brokenness, the defiance, and he sees not just talent, but a fire he has never encountered before. He sees you. And in that moment, the second great accident of your life begins. The first was the bus, the second is Diego. Your parents call it the marriage between an elephant and a dove. He is 20 years your senior, massive in stature and reputation, a man with a voracious appetite for life, for politics, and for other women. You are petite, sharp-tongued, and carry a universe of pain within your fragile frame. Your life together is a whirlwind of creation and chaos, a passionate, swirling storm that will both fuel your greatest work and cause you your deepest heartbreak. You travel with him, support his art, and watch as he is celebrated by the world. But his infidelities, including a devastating affair with your own sister, Christina, tear you apart. The pain is so immense you paint it, famously depicting yourself with your hair shorn, sitting in a man's suit, grieving not just the loss of him, but the loss of your own femininity in the wreckage. You divorce, but the bond is too powerful to be severed completely. A year later, you remarry, but on your own terms. It's a thoroughly modern arrangement before its time. You will live in adjoining houses, two separate blue buildings in San Angel joined by a high bridge, a physical representation of your bond, connected, yet independent. You will be financially autonomous, you will share your lives, but you will not be possessed. Historians still argue whether your relationship was one of true equals or if Diego's monumental fame inevitably overshadowed your work during your lifetime. He was the sun, a public muralist painting grand narratives, while you were the planet, a private artist painting the intense, burning core of human experience. But you were never just a satellite. You were a world unto yourself, with your own gravity, your own atmosphere, and your own, often secret, revolutions. Your home, the Casa Azul, is more than a house. It's a declaration. You paint its walls a vibrant cobalt blue, fill its garden with native Mexican plants, and populate it with pre-Columbian idols and folk art. This is your sanctuary, but it is also your political headquarters. You are a committed communist, and your belief in revolution is not an abstract idea. It is the blood that runs through your veins. Your art and your politics are inseparable. In 1937, you and Diego petitioned the Mexican government to grant asylum to Leon Trotsky, the exiled Russian revolutionary leader who is being hunted by Stalin. For 2 years, Trotsky and his wife live with you at the Casa Azul. It's an intense, intellectually charged time. You have fiery debates about Marxism, you listen to his stories of the revolution, and for a brief, heady period, you have a secret affair with the aging revolutionary himself. It's a fringe tidbit of your life that adds another layer of complexity to your story, a testament to your passionate nature. You even dedicate a stunning self-portrait to him, presenting yourself in your finest clothes, a letter in your hand declaring your affection. This political conviction was not born in a vacuum. Biographers still argue whether your passionate communism was a deeply held political philosophy from the start or a conviction that solidified in reaction to the stark capitalism you witnessed in the United States. While traveling with Diego for his commissions in San Francisco, Detroit, and New York, you are repulsed by the social stratification, the vapid conversations of the wealthy elite, and the soullessness of industrial ambition. You paint your disillusionment in a piece called Self-Portrait on the borderline between Mexico and the United States. On one side, you depict an industrialized, gray America of factories and skyscrapers. On the other, a vibrant, fertile Mexico of ancient gods and lush plants. You stand between them, a small, proud figure holding a Mexican flag, making it perfectly clear where your loyalties lie. You are not just visiting America, you are judging it. And you use your art not just to express, but to protest. Every brushstroke becomes a political act. You paint the hammer and sickle onto the plaster corsets that bind your broken body. You weave red ribbons, the color of revolution, through your braided hair. When you paint yourself, you are not just painting a woman. You are painting a Mexican woman, a revolutionary woman. Your art becomes a space where the personal and the political merge completely. A painting of your own physical suffering is also a painting of the suffering of the oppressed. A portrait of your face is also a portrait of your homeland. You host a wanted revolutionary in your home, a move far more intense than letting a friend crash on your couch for a weekend, because you believe that art without conviction is merely decoration. And you are not in the business of decorating. You are in the busi. Your identity is something you construct with the same care and intention as one of your paintings. It begins each morning in front of the mirror. The image you create is a direct challenge to the Western ideals of beauty that you so despised. Your unibrow, which you accentuate rather than pluck, becomes your signature, a flag of defiance against conformity. The faint mustache on your upper lip, which you also highlight in your portraits, is another rejection of sanitized femininity. You are not interested in being beautiful by anyone else's standards. You are interested in being powerfully, authentically yourself. You craft your image as a living work of art, a walking collage of your beliefs. This is most evident in your embrace of traditional Tewana dress. The embroidered blouses, the lace-hemmed skirts, the elaborate floral headdresses. This is your uniform. It is a celebration of Mexico's indigenous roots, a visual protest against the cultural imperialism of Europe and the United States. But it's also a deeply personal choice, connecting you to a part of Mexico known for its strong, matriarchal culture. You collect traditional Mexican art, especially the small, devotional paintings on tin known as ex votos. These humble works, telling stories of miracles and survival, heavily influence your own style. You borrow their narrative quality, their raw emotional honesty, and their small, intimate scale. You are not just appropriating a style. You are honoring a lineage of Mexican storytellers. Cultural critics still argue whether your adoption of Tijuana dress was a pure act of cultural preservation or also a masterful piece of personal branding, a conscious construction of an unforgettable artistic persona. The truth is likely that it was both. You understood the power of an image, the power of a story. You were crafting a personal brand long before the age of influencers, but your brand was one of raw authenticity, not curated perfection. You surrounded yourself with life, with flowers, with animals, with color, as if to ward off the constant presence of pain and death. Your art, your clothes, your home, your politics, your tumultuous love for Diego, they were all threads woven into a single, complex tapestry. They were all part of the same story. The story of a woman who refused to be defined by any single thing, who insisted on containing multitudes, and who, in painting her own reality, created a new reality for what a woman, and an artist, could be. And as you put the final flower in your hair, you look in the mirror and see not just a reflection, but a revolution, looking right back at you. You are in a room that smells of oil paint, turpentine, and the faint, clean scent of medical linen. Your body is an unwilling prisoner, held captive by a plaster corset, but your mind is free, and your hand holds a brush. This small wooden instrument is your key, your passport out of the stillness. On the easel before you is a small sheet of tin, and in the mirror beside it, your own face stares back, framed by dark, braided hair. This is your work. You are not painting a landscape of rolling hills or a bowl of perfect fruit. You are mapping the landscape of your own body, a territory ravaged by a war that began with the screech of metal and the shattering of bone. You paint what you know. You paint the steel column that has replaced your spine, shattered and cold, in the broken column. You show yourself split open, weeping but defiant, your skin pierced by dozens of nails, each one a tiny, screaming testament to a moment of pain. It's an image of utter devastation, yet your gaze is direct. You are not asking for pity. You are simply presenting the evidence. It's the most intense, "this is fine" meme ever created. A portrait of agony met with an unblinking stare. This clinical precision in your work isn't an accident. You once dreamed of being a doctor, and you have a deep, almost anatomical understanding of your own suffering. You paint your wounds not as abstract sorrows, but with the sharp focus of a medical illustration. You are both the patient and the surgeon, the subject and the scientist, dissecting your own trauma one brushstroke at a time. This relentless documentation of your body is a language you have invented for yourself. When a miscarriage in a Detroit hospital leaves you heartbroken, you paint yourself on a hospital bed, alone in a barren landscape, tied by umbilical-like red ribbons to the symbols of your loss. A tiny fetus, a fractured pelvis, a snail representing the slowness of the agony. Art historians still argue whether the recurring imagery of blood and open wounds in your work is primarily a personal catharsis or a broader political statement about the suffering of the Mexican people. Perhaps it is both. In your art, the personal body and the political body are one and the same. The wounds on your skin are the wounds of your country, a land also scarred by revolution and conquest. You are not just painting your pain. You are painting a universal human truth, the simple, brutal fact that to live is sometimes to hurt. You paint yourself over and over again. Of your roughly 150 surviving works, more than 50 are self-portraits. You once famously explained why. I paint myself because I am so often alone, and because I am the subject I know best. In the long, quiet hours of recovery, in the lonely spaces between surgeries, your own reflection became your most faithful companion. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows the weariness in your eyes, the faint mustache on your upper lip you refuse to remove, the bold, singular line of your eyebrows that meet in the middle. You mastered the art of the selfie decades before the front-facing camera, but your portraits were never about finding the perfect angle. They were about finding the truth, no matter how unflattering or uncomfortable. Critics still argue whether your prolific self-portraiture was an act of radical self-exploration or a form of narcissism born from isolation. But to call it narcissism is to miss the point entirely. You are not painting yourself out of self-love, but out of a desperate need to understand, to document, to exist. Each portrait is a timestamp, a record of survival. This is me after the surgery. This is me after the heartbreak. This is me, still here. You often choose to work on a small, intimate scale, painting on tin or masonite. This style was directly influenced by your love for traditional Mexican folk art, especially the small devotional paintings called retablos or ex-votos. You collected hundreds of them. These humble pictures, created by anonymous artists to give thanks for a miracle or to document a tragedy, resonated deeply with you. They were raw, honest, and deeply personal stories on a small sheet of metal. You adopted their style, their scale, and their spirit, but you turned the object of devotion inward. The miracle you were documenting was your own endurance. The world outside your room, the world of art in Europe, is captivated by surrealism, a movement dedicated to unlocking the subconscious, to painting dreams and the bizarre landscapes of the mind. When André Breton, the Pope of Surrealism, comes to Mexico, he sees your work and immediately tries to claim you as one of their own. He is enchanted by what he sees as the strange, dreamlike quality of your paintings. But you are not impressed. You find the surrealists to be a pretentious and silly boys' club, obsessing over Freudian theories while you are grappling with the very real, very solid reality of your own body. You famously reject the label he tries to pin on you. They thought I was a surrealist, you would say, but I wasn't. I never painted dreams. I painted my own reality. And your reality was filled with a rich, coded language of symbols. These were not the random juxtapositions of a dream. Each element in your paintings had a specific, deeply personal meaning. The monkeys that often appear with their arms wrapped gently around your neck are not just exotic pets. They are tender, protective symbols, alter egos that represent the wild, untamed part of your spirit. The hummingbirds, which in Mexican folklore are often used as good luck charms for love, might appear dead around your neck, a symbol of your romantic heartbreak. The thorns that pierce your skin are a direct reference to the suffering of Christ, casting you as a modern, female martyr. This is not a dream diary. It is a carefully constructed autobiography told in symbols. Curators still argue whether placing your work alongside the European surrealists in museum exhibitions honors your international influence or fundamentally misunderstands your artistic intent by ignoring your explicit rejection of the label. You didn't need to look to your subconscious for strange or powerful imagery. You just needed to look in the mirror. So you continue to paint, in your own way, on your own terms. You blend the vibrant colors and rich symbolism of your Mexican heritage with the unflinching honesty of a confessional. You paint your face surrounded by lush leaves and exotic animals, a queen presiding over your own painful, beautiful kingdom. You paint your love for Diego, your grief, your revolutionary politics, your broken body, and your unbreakable spirit. You create a visual language so personal that it becomes universal. You show the world that a woman's reality, especially a reality filled with pain and struggle, is a subject worthy of great art. You never flinch, and you never look away. And as you put the final stroke on another self-portrait, the face that stares back at you from the canvas is not just your own. It is the face of anyone who has ever had to turn their suffering into a story, their wounds into wisdom, and their reality into a work of art. It is a warm afternoon in Mexico City, September 17, 1925. The air is filled with the sounds of the bustling streets, the calls of vendors, the clang of a distant tram, the gentle hum of conversations. You are 18 years old, and the world feels like it is brimming with promise. You are not just any girl. You are one of the brightest students at the prestigious National Preparatory School, a place where young men are groomed to become the leaders of Mexico. You are one of only 35 girls among 2,000 boys, a fact that doesn't intimidate you in the slightest. Your mind is sharp, your wit is sharper, and your dream is to become a doctor. You love science, the precision of it, the way it seeks to understand the intricate machinery of the human body. You are a member of the Cachuchas, a rebellious and brilliant group of friends known for their political debates, literary discussions, and matching newsboy caps. You are provocateurs, thinkers, and dreamers, and you feel like you can change the world. It's the original intellectual squad goals, and you are its vibrant, outspoken heart. Biographers still argue whether your outspoken, provocative personality was an innate part of your character or a defiant armor you developed early on to cope with the lingering effects of childhood polio, which left one of your legs thinner than the other. But on this day, you are not thinking about that. You are thinking about your boyfriend, Alejandro Gomez Arias, who is sitting beside you on the simple wooden bus. The bus rumbles along, its rickety frame swaying with the rhythm of the road. The afternoon sun streams through the windows, casting long shadows across the passengers. You and Alejandro are laughing, perhaps arguing playfully, your hands intertwined. You had lost your umbrella and had gotten off the bus to look for it, only to board a second one. A small, seemingly insignificant choice. You are carrying a small pouch of powdered gold, a purchase you made for a craft project. The moment is utterly, beautifully ordinary. You are just a girl, in love, on a bus, heading home from school, with a future that feels as bright and limitless as the blue sky above. You have no idea that in the next few seconds, the girl you are now will cease to exist, and a new one, forged in chaos and pain, will begin to take her place. There is no time to brace for it. There is only a sudden, violent screech of metal on metal, a deafening roar as an electric trolley car slams into the side of your fragile wooden bus. The world splinters into a nightmare of sound and motion. The bus is pushed against a wall, buckling and disintegrating around you. Time seems to warp, slowing to a crawl and then exploding into a single, horrific instant. You are thrown forward, and a crude iron handrail, like a spear, detaches from the bus and finds you. It enters your left hip and pierces straight through your pelvis, exiting on the other side. The impact is catastrophic. Your spine fractures in 3 places. Your collarbone snaps. 2 of your ribs are broken. Your right leg, the one already weakened by polio, shatters in 11 places. Your foot is crushed, your shoulder dislocated. The chaos subsides into a strange, ringing silence, punctuated by the groans of the injured. You are lying on the floor of the ruined bus, impaled, broken, and bleeding. And then, something almost surreal happens. A fellow passenger, a house painter, had been carrying a packet of powdered gold. In the crash, the packet burst open, showering your broken, bleeding body with a fine, glittering dust. As the first horrified onlookers peer into the wreckage, they see a devastating, almost mythical sight. A young girl, stripped of her clothes by the force of the impact, covered in blood and shimmering gold, like a broken doll from some terrible, beautiful fairy tale. Historians still argue whether the initial response at the scene was one of immediate help or if, as some accounts suggest, a moment of stunned horror passed as onlookers processed the bizarre, almost artistic tableau of your gilded, broken form. Alejandro, though injured himself, finds the strength to pull the iron rod from your body, an act of desperation that likely saves your life but causes you unimaginable agony. You scream, a sound so primal and full of pain that it silences the street. Someone, seeing your state, covers you with a coat. The world fades in and out. The scent of dust and blood fills the air. The dream of being a doctor, of understanding and healing the body, dies in that moment, replaced by the brutal, first-hand knowledge of just how easily a body can be unmade. You are no longer an aspiring physician. You are now, and for the rest of your life, a patient. The golden girl on the floor of the bus is gone, and the long, painful journey of becoming someone else has just begun. You wake up in the sterile white world of the Red Cross hospital. The first thing you become aware of is the pain, a constant, malevolent presence that will become your shadow for the next 30 years. The second is the stillness. You are encased in a full body cast, a plaster coffin that holds your shattered bones in place. You can't move. You can't turn your head. Your entire universe is the ceiling above your bed. The days bleed into one another in a monotonous cycle of agony, infection, and uncertainty. The list of your injuries is a litany of devastation. The doctors don't know if you will walk again, or even if you will survive. The girl who was once so full of motion, so quick with a joke or an argument, is now trapped in a silent, immobile prison of her own body. Your dream of medicine is over. The hands that you hoped would one day hold a scalpel to heal others can now barely hold a fork. But in the depths of this despair, a tiny seed of a new purpose is planted. Your mother, desperate to give you something to occupy your mind, commissions a special easel that can be used while lying down. It's a strange, hopeful contraption, a testament to a mother's love. Then, she has a mirror installed on the canopy of your 4-poster bed. Suddenly, your world is no longer just the ceiling. It is your own face. You stare at your reflection for hours, studying the girl with the haunted eyes, the familiar dark brows, the face that has become the sole landscape in your static world. Your father, a photographer, gives you a box of his oil paints and some brushes. At first, it is just a distraction, something to pass the endless hours. You begin to paint, your plaster cast making every movement a struggle. Your first studio has 0-foot traffic and a very strict dress code. You paint what you see. You paint yourself. Art historians still argue whether you would have become a painter had the accident never happened, or if the artistic impulse was always there, simply awakened and given focus by profound tragedy. What is certain is that in this hospital bed, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic, you find a new way to live. If you can no longer dissect the human body with the tools of a doctor, you will dissect it with the tools of an artist. You will turn your pain into pictures, your suffering into stories. The accident took everything from you, your health, your mobility, your future. But it also gave you something in return. It gave you your one, true subject, your own reality. And as you mix the colors on your palette, you begin the slow, arduous process of painting yourself back into existence, one brushstroke at a time. The candle flickers, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls of your study in the Winter Palace. Outside, St. Petersburg is a frozen, sleeping giant, but in here, the air is warm with the scent of melted wax and old leather-bound books. It is long past midnight, but you are not tired. You are writing. Your quill pen scratches rhythmically against the heavy parchment, a quiet sound in the immense silence of the palace. You are not drafting a decree or a military order. You are writing a letter to a man in France, a man you have never met but consider your teacher. His name is Voltaire, and you, Catherine the Great, Empress of all Russia, are his devoted student. This is your sanctuary. After a day of navigating the treacherous currents of the court, of smiling at ambitious nobles and placating anxious generals, this is where you feel most yourself. Surrounded by thousands of books, you shed the skin of the autocrat and become the philosopher queen. You believe in reason, in progress, in the power of human intellect to shape a better world. Your correspondence with the great thinkers of the Enlightenment is your lifeline to that world. You flatter Voltaire, calling him the universal genius, and he, in turn, calls you the Star of the North. It's like being pen pals with your favorite celebrity, except instead of asking for an autograph, you are debating the nature of justice and the responsibilities of a monarch. Your commitment is more than just words. When you learn that the French philosopher Denis Diderot, the co-founder of the Great Encyclopedia, is forced to sell his personal library to provide a dowry for his daughter, you see an opportunity. You buy his entire collection for a generous sum, but with a brilliant twist. You insist that he keep all the books in Paris and appoint him as your librarian, for life, with a handsome salary paid 50 years in advance. It's a magnificent gesture of patronage, a bit of 18th century GoFundMe for a genius, and a stunning public relations victory. All of Europe takes note. The Empress of Russia is not a barbarian from the frozen steppes. She is a champion of learning, a true enlightened sovereign. But even here, in the quiet of your study, a question lingers, one that will follow you throughout your reign. Historians still argue whether your embrace of Enlightenment ideals was a genuine philosophical commitment or a masterful exercise in public relations, designed to legitimize your shaky claim to the throne in the eyes of a skeptical Europe. You came to this throne not by birthright, but by a bold and bloodless coup. You know that power won by intrigue can be lost just as easily. You must rule not just as a conqueror, but as a visionary. One of your most ambitious projects is the Legislative Commission of 1767. You summon more than 500 delegates from every corner of your sprawling empire: nobles, townspeople, state peasants, Cossacks, to the great halls of Moscow. Their task is monumental: to create a new, unified code of laws for Russia. To guide them, you spend 2 years personally drafting a document called the Nakaz, or the Instruction. It is your manifesto, a distillation of the Enlightenment principles you have so eagerly absorbed from Montesquieu and Beccaria. In it, you question the use of torture. You suggest that all citizens should be equal before the law, and you argue that the goal of a state is not to deprive people of their liberty, but to guide their actions to achieve the greatest good for all. The document is so radical that when it is published abroad, it is immediately banned in France. The government of King Louis XV deems your ideas too revolutionary for his people to read, a fact that must have brought a wry smile to your face. The irony is thick enough to be spread on toast. While you, an absolute monarch, are advocating for liberal reforms, the supposed heart of European civilization is censoring your work. But putting these ideals into practice in Russia is another matter entirely. The Legislative Commission descends into a morass of squabbling and competing interests. The nobles want to protect their privileges, the merchants want to protect their monopolies, and no one can agree on anything. It becomes the biggest, most unproductive group project in history. After more than 200 sessions, you are forced to disband the commission indefinitely. The great legal reform never materializes. The most glaring contradiction of your enlightened rule is the institution of serfdom. Millions of your subjects are legally bound to the land, living as the property of the nobility. In your private writings, you lament this state of affairs, calling it an intolerable and cruel yoke. But you are a pragmatist. Your power depends entirely on the support of the serf-owning nobility who helped you seize the throne. To free the serfs would be to commit political suicide. Historians still argue whether you ever seriously intended to abolish serfdom or if your writings on the subject were merely an intellectual exercise, a philosophical sigh for a problem you had no real will to solve. In the end, not only do you fail to free the serfs, you actually extend serfdom into new territories like Ukraine, gifting vast estates and the people on them to your favored nobles and lovers. The velvet glove of philosophy is soft, but the iron fist of political reality is unyielding. While your domestic reforms may have stalled, your ambition on the world stage knows no bounds. You see Russia not as a peripheral nation, but as a dominant force in European affairs. You spread out the maps in your study, your fingers tracing the borders of your empire, and you see not where Russia is, but where it could be. Your gaze turns south, towards the Black Sea, controlled by your great rival, the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, Russian rulers have dreamed of securing warm water ports, a vital outlet for trade and naval power. You are determined to be the one who achieves it. You waged two major wars against the Ottomans, and under the command of brilliant, ruthless generals like Alexander Suvorov and your lover, Gregory Potemkin, your armies are stunningly successful. They crush the Turkish forces, and by the end of the Second War, you have achieved your goal. You annex the entire Crimean Peninsula, a jewel on the Black Sea, and secure a vast stretch of its northern coastline. In 1787, you embark on a grand tour of these new territories, a 6-month triumphal procession of unprecedented scale. It is during this tour that the most famous story, or myth, about your reign is born. To impress you and the foreign ambassadors with the prosperity of the new lands, Potemkin allegedly constructs fake portable villages along the banks of the Dnieper River. As your barge floats by, you see happy, well-dressed peasants milling about freshly painted facades. But once you are out of sight, the facades are packed up and hastily reassembled further downstream for you to see again the next day. It's the 18th century equivalent of using a fancy zoom background to hide the mess in your room. Historians still argue whether these Potemkin villages were a real, large-scale deception or just an exaggerated tale spread by Potemkin's rivals. But the story endures because it captures something essential about your rule, a blend of genuine achievement, masterful showmanship, and a willingness to shape reality to fit your vision. Your expansionist appetite is not limited to the south. To the west lies the vast but weak Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. In a series of cold, calculated diplomatic maneuvers with Prussia and Austria, you begin to slice away at its territory. Over 3 partitions, from 1772 to 1795, you and your neighbors systematically devour Poland until it is completely erased from the map of Europe. It is a ruthless act of realpolitik, widely condemned but stunningly effective. With these acquisitions, you add millions of new subjects and vast, fertile lands to your empire. You have transformed Russia, dragging it from the edge of Europe to its very center. The star of the north now shines brighter, and casts a longer shadow than ever before. You have earned your title, Catherine the Great, and as you fold up the maps late at night in your quiet study, you feel the immense weight and satisfaction of a legacy written not just in philosophy, but in territory, power, and the remaking of the world. You are deep in the jungle of Chiapas, Mexico. The air is thick and heavy, a damp green blanket that muffles all sound except for the distant, guttural call of a howler monkey and the steady thrum of insects. It's 1994, and you're part of an archaeological team working in the ruins of the great Maya city of Palenque. You are not here for the main attractions. Your focus is a modest, vine-choked pyramid known as Temple 13, standing in the shadow of its magnificent neighbor, the Temple of the Inscriptions, the final resting place of the city's most famous ruler, Kayanich Janab Pakal. Temple 13 has long been considered secondary, perhaps an administrative building or a minor shrine. But you've noticed something. A small crack in the floor, a slight inconsistency in the stonework. Guided by intuition and expertise, your team begins to explore. You clear away centuries of debris and find a small, sealed doorway. This is it. The telltale sign of a hidden chamber, untouched by looters, its secrets undisturbed for over 1,000 years. It's the ultimate archaeological escape room, except the prize isn't just getting out, it's rewriting history. After careful work, you create a small opening into the darkness beyond. A puff of ancient air, musty with the scent of deep earth and sealed time, escapes to greet you. Lowering a light, you peer into the void. It's a small, vaulted chamber, and in its center sits a large, monolithic stone sarcophagus. Your heart pounds. Sarcophagi were reserved for the highest-ranking rulers in Maya society, and finding one in this unassuming temple is a shock. But the real surprise comes when you and the team finally manage to lift the heavy stone lid. As it moves, a cloud of brilliant red dust billows out, staining the air, the walls, and your clothes a startling, vibrant crimson. The entire interior of the sarcophagus, and the skeleton resting within, is coated in a thick layer of this powder. It is an overwhelming, almost violent splash of color in the monochrome darkness of the tomb. You have never seen anything like it. There are no carved glyphs, no inscriptions to tell you who lies here. Her name is a mystery, but in this moment, seeing her bathed in this stunning red pigment, you give her a title that will stick forever. You call her the Red Queen. Archaeologists still argue whether the tomb was deliberately left without inscriptions to conceal the occupant's identity, or if her story was meant to be told not through text, but through the tomb's potent symbolic contents. The red dust that surrounds you is cinnabar, a toxic mercury sulfide. For the ancient Maya, it was one of the most sacred and powerful substances they knew. Its brilliant crimson color was a symbol of blood, the life force of the universe. It represented the rising sun, the moment of rebirth, and the sacred portal between the world of the living and the world of the gods, the underworld known as Xibalba. To be buried in this manner was an immense honor, a ritual preparation for deification. This wasn't just a burial. It was a magical transformation. But the substance was also dangerous. Mayanists still argue whether the primary purpose of the cinnabar was spiritual, to magically preserve the body for its journey to the underworld, or if it also served a more practical, albeit grim, purpose, to deter tomb robbers with its toxicity. Whatever the reason, its presence here screams royalty. As the crimson dust settles, you begin to see the treasures that were placed with her for her final journey. Her skull is covered by the remains of a funerary mask, once a mosaic of more than 100 exquisitely carved pieces of green jadeite. Her forehead was adorned with a diadem made of shimmering malachite beads. Jade necklaces and bracelets encircle her fragile bones. Jade, for the Maya, was more valuable than gold. It was the color of new maize, the symbol of breath, life, and eternity. But the most intimate and quirky detail is discovered later, during forensic analysis. You find that her teeth were stained red, a sign that the ritual preparation extended to the very core of her physical being. This was the most intense and high-stakes makeup application in history, designed to last for an eternity. Lying beside her are other offerings: a small jade figurine, shell beads, and bone needles, tools for the afterlife. This woman, whoever she was not just sent on her way. She was equipped to become a god. Her silence is deafening, but her burial speaks volumes. The identity of the woman in the Crimson Tomb becomes the greatest puzzle at Palenque. There are no names, no dates, just the silent, powerful evidence of her status. The most compelling clue is her location. Your tomb in Temple 13 is directly adjacent to the Grand Pyramid of Pakal the Great. In a city where sacred architecture was a map of the cosmos and dynastic power, this proximity cannot be a coincidence. It suggests an intimate, fundamental connection between the person in this tomb and the great king next door. The leading theory, the one that feels most right in the humid jungle air, is that you are Tiziak-bu Aja, Pakal's beloved wife and the mother of 2 future kings. You were a powerful figure in your own right, a noblewoman from a nearby city who married into the Palenque dynasty and became its queen. Historical records tell us you lived a long life, dying around the year 672, a date that aligns perfectly with the carbon dating of the remains. A queen buried with honors befitting a king, placed for eternity beside her husband. It makes perfect narrative sense. To test this, forensic experts attempt to link your DNA to that of Pakal's known descendants. But the ancient DNA is degraded, and the results are frustratingly ambiguous. Forensic experts still argue about the inconclusive DNA results. While early tests showed no direct maternal link between you and 2 of Pakal's known sons, ruling out the theory you were his mother, the technology of the time made it difficult to definitively confirm a spousal relationship. The science, for now, leaves the mystery intact. But your bones tell another story. Analysis reveals that you lived to be around 60 years old, a venerable age for the 7th century. It also shows that you suffered from a severe case of osteoporosis. For you to have survived so long with such a debilitating condition speaks to a life of extreme privilege. You were cared for, revered, and sheltered from the physical hardships that wore down the common people. It's a concept known as the osteological paradox. Sometimes, evidence of chronic disease in ancient remains is actually a sign of high status, because only the elite could afford to be sick for that long. It's a bit like solving a 1,300-year-old cold case when your key witness is a skeleton, but every bone fragment adds another sentence to her silent story. You lie in your sarcophagus, a silent refutation of the idea that Maya women were merely passive figures. You were a queen, a matriarch, a central pillar of a great dynasty. And as the evening jungle descends into a symphony of chirps and calls, you can almost feel the weight of your story settling back over the stones of Palenque. Your name may be lost to a definite science, whispered only as a strong theory, but your presence is undeniable. You are the Red Queen, a woman of power and mystery, resting in your eternal, crimson-stained sleep, a silent but powerful testament to a life that mattered. You are 14 years old, and you are freezing. The wind howls across the endless, snow-covered plains of Russia, a sound so lonely it seems to seep into your very bones. You are a German princess, born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, a name that sounds small and insignificant in this vast, intimidating landscape. You have left your provincial home behind, summoned to this frozen empire for a single purpose: to marry a boy you have never met, the heir to the Russian throne, Grand Duke Peter. You are a political pawn in a game played by emperors and empresses, a small piece being moved across a very large chessboard. As your carriage rumbles towards St. Petersburg, you pull the heavy furs tighter around you, a fragile girl on the cusp of a formidable destiny. The Russian court is a dazzling, dangerous world of intrigue, opulence, and whispered plots. It is presided over by the imposing Empress Elizabeth, a woman of immense appetites and absolute power. She chose you as Peter's bride, believing a minor German princess would be pliable, grateful, and easy to control. Your first and most crucial task is to shed your old self completely. You must convert from your native Lutheranism to Russian Orthodoxy. It is a grand, public ceremony, and as you stand before the gilded iconostasis, you are given a new name, Yekaterina, or Catherine. You repeat the Orthodox Catechism in a language you have only just begun to learn. But you do more than just learn it, you attack it. Determined to win over the Empress and your new people, you study Russian with a ferocious intensity. You practice late into the night, often in your bare feet in the frigid palace rooms, believing the cold would keep you awake. This relentless study leads to a severe bout of pleurisy that nearly kills you. But as you lie in your sickbed, delirious with fever, the court takes notice. This German girl is not weak or flighty. She has iron in her soul. Your embrace of all things Russian is immediate and total. You learn the language, you master the rituals of the church, you cultivate friendships with powerful nobles. You are playing the long game from the very beginning. It is the most extreme version of a study abroad program ever conceived, where your final exam is for the throne of an empire. Historians still argue whether your immediate and passionate embrace of Russian culture was a genuine love affair with your new homeland or a calculated political strategy to differentiate yourself from your sullen, German-obsessed husband. Whatever the motive, the effect is profound. You are becoming Russian, while your husband, Peter, remains stubbornly, petulantly German. Your wedding day arrives, a magnificent spectacle of gold and diamonds, but it marks the beginning of a profoundly unhappy and lonely marriage. You are intelligent, curious, and ambitious. Peter is childish, cruel, and obsessed with his toy soldiers. While you spend your evenings reading the great works of the Enlightenment, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Diderot, he spends his hours drilling his servants in Prussian military formations or playing with his vast collection of miniature soldiers. His idea of statecraft is to stage elaborate court-martials for any rats caught chewing on his toys. In one infamous incident, he had a rat formally tried, sentenced, and executed by hanging, a grim bit of theater that perfectly captured his erratic and immature nature. He is a boy playing at being a man, while you are a woman forced to wait for him to grow up. For years, your marriage is a cold and empty one. Biographers still argue whether your marriage to Peter was ever consummated in the early years, or if the lack of an heir for nearly a decade was due to his physical issues, his indifference, or a mutual repulsion. You are isolated, watched constantly, your letters read, your friendships scrutinized. You are the Grand Duchess, the future Empress, yet you are powerless, a beautiful bird in a gilded cage. But you do not despair. You use these long years of loneliness to educate yourself, to observe the intricate power dynamics of the court, and to quietly cultivate a network of allies. You charm the powerful guards regiments, you befriend influential ministers, and you earn a reputation for your piety, your intelligence, and your unwavering dignity. A stark contrast to your husband's public drunkenness and boorish behavior. Peter openly admires Russia's greatest enemy, Frederick the Great of Prussia, and scorns the Russian customs you have so eagerly embraced. He is collecting all the biggest red flags in history, and you are taking careful, meticulous notes. While he plays war, you are quietly planning one. In the final days of 1761, Empress Elizabeth dies. Your husband, Peter, ascends to the throne as Tsar Peter III. His reign is a disaster from the very first day. In just 6 short months, he manages to alienate every powerful faction in Russia. His most disastrous act is to immediately make peace with his hero, Frederick the Great, ending the 7 Years' War and giving back all the Prussian territory that Russia had won at great cost in blood and treasure. The army is enraged. He further insults them by forcing them to wear Prussian-style uniforms and adopt harsh Prussian drills. He antagonizes the powerful Orthodox Church by seizing its lands and mocking its rituals. He humiliates the nobility and talks openly of divorcing you to marry his mistress. The empire watches in horror as their new czar seems determined to undo everything they hold dear. You, in contrast, have become the symbol of Russian tradition and hope. The time for waiting is over. The time for acting is now. In the pre-dawn hours of June 28, 1762, while Peter is away at his country palace, the plan you have so carefully nurtured springs into action. Your lover, a handsome and ambitious guards officer named Grigory Orlov, wakes you and tells you it is time to arise. All is prepared for your proclamation. You dress quickly, borrowing the uniform of an officer of the guards, and ride through the sleeping streets of St. Petersburg to the barracks of the Izmailovsky regiment. They greet you with cheers, swear allegiance to you, and kiss your hands. From there, your support snowballs. Regiment by regiment, the Imperial Guard declares for you. As you ride out to address them, you realize your ceremonial sword lacks a proper sword knot, the decorative tassel that completes the uniform. Seeing this, a dashing young officer named Grigory Potemkin spurs his horse forward and gives you his. It is a small, gallant gesture, but you notice him. It is your first encounter with the man who will become the greatest love and most important political partner of your life. By the end of the morning, the Senate and the Church have also sworn fealty. You are proclaimed Catherine II, Empress and autocrat of all Russia. Your coup is swift, decisive, and entirely bloodless. Peter hears the news and panics. He makes a few half-hearted attempts to rally support, but it is too late. No one will fight for him. He abdicates the throne and is taken into custody. Your divorce is a bit more permanent, and involves significantly more military regiments than most. A week later, he is dead. The official report states the cause of death was a severe attack of hemorrhoidal colic. It is a diagnosis so absurdly convenient that no one believes it. He was almost certainly murdered by the Orlov brothers. Historians still argue about the extent of your direct involvement. Did you give the order? Did you give your tacit approval? Or did they act on their own to secure your throne and their own positions? The truth remains buried with him. What is certain is that you are now the undisputed ruler of the Russian Empire. You stand before your people, not as Sophie, the German pawn, not as Catherine, the unhappy wife, but as Catherine II, the Empress. Your long, lonely apprenticeship is over. Your legendary reign has just begun.